The night air was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote. A lonely widow sat by her small cabin fire, staring at the flames as if they could swallow her grief. Her husband had been gone for months, buried beneath the frozen soil of last winter, and the emptiness he left behind weighed on her like an anchor. The farm he had built with his own hands was crumbling under her weary touch, and each day she wondered how long she could survive before hunger or loneliness claimed her too. Then, one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, a shadow appeared at her door. A towering Apache warrior, broad-shouldered and strong, his presence filling the space with an unshakable gravity. His eyes met hers with a force that stopped her breath, and his voice, deep as thunder, carried words that both frightened and awakened something inside her. "By winter, you'll have my son growing inside you. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and powerful stories that touch the heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth. Your support helps keep stories like this alive." The widow, Eleanor, trembled at the man's vow, unsure whether to fear him or believe him. His name was Cale, a warrior whose people lived beyond the forests and rivers that bordered her land. He had been known among settlers as both a protector and a danger, depending on who told the tale. But to Eleanor, who stood barefoot in her doorway clutching her shawl, he was neither myth nor rumor. He was flesh and blood, a man who looked at her not with pity, but with an unflinching certainty. She had been invisible for so long, widowed, whispered about, left to toil alone, but under Cale's gaze, she felt seen again, and it stirred something she thought had died with her husband. Her struggle was brutal. Each day she labored to keep the farm alive, hauling buckets of water, cutting wood with trembling arms, trying to coax life from fields gone barren. Her daughter, only 8, looked to her for strength, but Eleanor could feel herself unraveling inside. Loneliness cut sharper than hunger, and fear haunted her every night. The villagers who once offered smiles now gave her wary glances, as if her grief was contagious. Rumors spread of her speaking with Kyle, of him seen near her land, and the gossip poisoned her already fragile heart. Yet despite it all, Cale returned. He came not as a thief or intruder, but as a man who carried wood to her doorstep, who hunted and left meat by her fire, who spoke with the honesty of someone who had nothing to prove. Still, the vow he had spoken lingered in her mind. She could not deny that her heart ached for closeness, for the warmth of arms around her at night, for the chance to feel alive again. Yet guilt pressed down on her chest. Was it betrayal to her late husband to even think of another man? Was she foolish to even imagine such a life with someone so different, someone whose people were feared by her own? But every time she saw Cale with her daughter, every time the child laughed as he lifted her high into the air with gentle strength, the walls inside her heart began to weaken. Cale was a man of few words, but his actions spoke louder than any vow. He repaired her fences, sowed her fields, and guarded her land as if it were his own. Where others judged, he stood without shame. Eleanor found herself watching him work, noticing the way the sunlight caught the lines of his face, the calm steadiness of his movements, the quiet dignity of a man who carried both strength and sorrow in equal measure. He did not push her, did not demand her, but his presence alone was a promise. She was not alone anymore. The seasons turned, and with them so did Eleanor's heart. Fear gave way to trust gave way to comfort, and comfort slowly blossomed into something she had not dared to feel again. Love. It was not the same as what she had lost. It was something new, raw, and unexpected, a fire that burned not in memory but in the present moment. Cale's vow no longer sounded like thunder. It sounded like hope, but the world around them was not kind. Villagers whispered cruelly. Some threatened her for welcoming him into her home. There were nights Eleanor wept from the weight of it all, terrified for her daughter's future, terrified that she had chosen wrong. Cale, in those moments, would place his great hand over hers and remind her with his silence that love was never wrong. He faced the hatred of others with the same calm strength he faced storms, unyielding and steady, and in his steadiness, Eleanor found courage. By the time winter's first snow fell, Eleanor's farm was alive again. Her fields had grown, her home was warm, and her heart was no longer hollow. She no longer counted days in grief but in laughter. Her daughter's joy, Cale's quiet smile, her own newfound peace. And though his vow had once frightened her, by winter she understood it differently. It was not just a promise of children, but a promise of life, of renewal, of never again being alone in the dark. Their love became a story whispered on both sides of the valley, not of scandal, but of strength. A widow who had been broken by loss, a warrior who had been hardened by solitude, and a bond that healed them both. It was proof that love does not always come as we expect it, but as we need it most. Dear friends, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can be reborn from ashes and that hope can arrive even in the darkest winters, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth. Special request before we end. Comment the words, "Hope endures" below if this story moved you. Your words help us keep telling stories of love, courage, and second chances.